Okay, I am obsessed with my kids' pajamas, which is why I was really excited to find Sleepy Drew, a family-owned small business where comfort meets styles for moms and their little ones. Their adorable pajamas come in 2-piece sets or zip-ups, and they're cozy, durable, and even have antibacterial properties. Designed by a mom with moms in mind, Sleepy Drew brings warmth and joy to your family's sleep routine. Visit sleepydrew.com and you can receive a 15% discount on your first order by using the code QUIETCONNECTION, all one word, at checkout. Shop now and make bedtime the best time with Sleepy Drew. Hi, welcome to Quiet Connection, a podcast dedicated to ending the stigma around postpartum mental health. I'm Chelsea. In this episode, I connect with Teresa, a mother of 2 who has learned the power and importance of love and perseverance through her parenting journey. She shares her experiences as a young mother navigating the NICU, as well as the passing of her eldest son as an adult. She has created a truly beautiful life. Let's hear from Teresa. Hello, today I'm here with Teresa. Teresa, how are you?
I am well, thanks, Chelsea, and thank you so much for having me. How are you?
I am good. I'm so glad to have you. I'm glad that we're able to connect this morning. The morning sessions are always hard. I am not a morning person, but it's okay. We're far enough into the morning. I think I got this. So I would love to start, like I start all my sessions, and just ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself, as well as who you were before you became a mom.
Okay, so today I am a board certified behavior analyst and infant toddler developmental specialist. So I work with children who are at risk for or not meeting developmental milestones. They could be at risk for autism or just any other learning difference. So so that's where I am now. But as you know, it wasn't always this way.
No. You were someone else before you were this, before you were a mother, before who was Teresa back in the day?
Oh gosh, back in the day, she first of all had no idea what she was doing, what she wanted. She knew she wanted children, and she wanted those children before 25, and at least 2, and that was it. Yes, at least 2 before 25. Because you know what? My mom had my sister late, like she was in her 30s. Mm-hmm. And I thought, no, not me. So that was my cutoff. If I didn't have them by 25, I wouldn't have any. Wow. And thankfully, I was blessed with 2 boys. Not that I knew what I was doing.
Do any of us?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, but I am thankful, muddled through it. And sometimes I feel that's exactly what it was, muddling through it. And by the grace of God, they survived.
Yeah, and so did you.
Yeah.
You mentioned you always knew you wanted to have kids. That's another one of my questions. So you just ticked that box right off my checklist. I say that I try to not interject a lot, but like what you're doing now really speaks to me and touches my heart. I'm a licensed special educator, so I work with those kids with low incidence disabilities and whatnot. So the work you're doing is really important. So thank you for that. What sort of things fill your cup? What do you do to bring yourself joy?
Meditate, because man, that keeps me grounded. And I didn't start meditating because, I wanted to be enlightened or anything. I started meditating because I worked with children in a low incidence program in a school district. There were those days when I was like, oh, Lord Jesus, please just help me. I just want to do the right thing right now. But, I just got punched in the face and spit on and kicked in the mouth and trying to just hold it together because it's triggering.
Yes.
So I'd have to step away and breathe and be like, okay, you got this. You got this. Remember, it's just a little baby who's struggling, It just felt like that was like an in the moment, that crisis moment, right? So I thought, how can I prevent myself from getting into these crises? So I stumbled upon meditation and I thought, let's give it a try.
It reminds me so much of a lot of the work that I did. I wonder if this will resonate with you, but with my kiddos who were a little bit more on the violent or aggressive side, I kind of would just sit there and, like you said, meditate and just take it, because I wanted them to know that I wasn't going anywhere. Like, I know that probably a lot of people in your life you scare and intimidate with these behaviors, and you're not doing it on purpose. So I'm
Mhm.
not going to leave. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that hits with me. I like that.
Yeah, yeah. Because you know what we have to remember too. A lot of times there's been abandonment and all that. So they're trying to get you to leave them before they leave. You know what I mean? Like they're the ones causing the separation
Mhm.
before you do that. So that now again, that's a control thing,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
if I prevent her from getting too close, then I'm in control. You
Yeah.
know, just because they've been left so many times and relationships have ended for whatever reason. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And all behavior is a form of communication. So sometimes they don't want you to leave. They just can't control what's going on, and I don't know, that's just always been something I've been passionate about. Like, I'm not going to leave you. I'm going to stay here. So,
Yeah.
I could talk about that forever, but but I kind of want to know more about your journey into parenthood. And you said you had this dream and this goal in your mind, 25 done. What did that journey look like in the beginning? How did you come into motherhood?
Oh, wow. It was crazy. So I fell in love at 16.
Woo! Didn't we
I
all?
Oh
But
my gosh. But yeah, I mean, he was going to be my forever guy, like forever, forever guy. Literally, his last name's Guy too. Um,
love it.
yeah. So yeah, so that happened, and we were together for a couple of years. It was kind of on and off. And at 18, I got pregnant a little earlier than I'd planned because I was in university, my first year of university. No, actually, before I went into my first, it was my last year of high school
Woo.
before I went to university. Yeah, it was early. I mean, like I said, 25, but yeah, 18 was. But you know what? It happened the way it did, and I embrace it.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so did that. And of course, I was still living at home. So mom sent me to Rosalie Hall, which is a place run by Catholics
Oh
for,
boy.
yeah. And which was a really nice place. I made some really great friends. It was awesome. So I spent a few months at Rosalie Hall and finished up my high school there. And then I had my baby and actually went into university right after. But yeah, after I had him, so I had Dre in July, and it was so crazy because it was, I mean, Lord knows I love my baby.
Yeah.
You know, that art you see behind me, my baby created that. So,
Wow.
yeah, yeah, he's just amazing. And he also did this one, so I'm just going to move that one as
Oh
well.
my goodness. So
Uh,
talented.
Yes, yes, both my babies are talented. My younger son, Lee, he's an amazing photographer. So
Mm.
they got it from their dad because, yeah. Anyway, um, so yeah, so I had during the summer, and it was kind of nice because, like I said, I wanted to go back to school. I wanted to start university in the summer, and I have just an amazing. My family is just so supportive. So I had him, was still at home with my mom and my stepfather and my sister and my brother. Right, we were all home still. I'm just trying to remember because my brother left. He's a little older than me and left soon after. But yeah, so the summer that I had him, it was thrilling to have him because my best friend and I were also pregnant at the same time, which was like
Mm.
so cool. And but after I had him, there was like this, it was weird, like this emptiness. I'm like, but I have this baby who I
Yeah.
love, and yet I still feel so odd, right?
Yeah.
It's just, and I want to just, hug him and hold him, but then I don't after, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? It was so weird. Like, and honestly, I knew nothing about postpartum depression,
Mm.
no idea what it was. I just knew that there were times when I was really thankful that I was at home with my mom and, my sister and my brother. And so they would also spend time with him. And,
Mm-hmm.
or I just like, okay, I just need to go out for a minute. Just to go sit outside on the, somewhere, just sit on the
Yeah.
grass somewhere, just for a minute. Cause I just, needed that. Cause like I said, I felt, I felt empty and I felt odd. I don't know. I can't even explain it. I can't even
Yeah.
explain it. But, and then I'm looking at my baby and I'm like, you were so stinking cute. And I love you.
Yeah.
And I want to be the best mom, and I don't know how.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's totally relatable. That's so like because I think a lot of people's instincts would be like, well, you were young, you were 18, you were still figuring yourself out. That is such a universal feeling to motherhood. Yeah, I love you so much, but like, who are you and who am I? And like, what is this? I don't know what we're doing. And I'm so glad that you had such a supportive family because that is one of the themes that I hear in all my episodes is community. We need community. And you had that.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
thank
did.
goodness.
And not only in my own home, because when I took my son to his dad's home where he still lived with his mom, and yeah, he still lived with his mom, stepfather, and his brothers. So I'd take him there, and it was just a beautiful thing. I mean, they just embraced him. They were there. Like his mom was like, "Listen, as long as I'm home, you can bring him," and hands with them, and it was beautiful. And that actually continued until his dad and we moved in together, and later got married and all that. But yeah, initially it was a scary time.
Yeah, I
It
can
was a very
imagine.
scary time, because just navigating this by myself. I mean, I wasn't by myself, but I felt by myself in a lot of times. And and I've spoken to people who, married and it's the same circumstance, married and have all this support and still felt alone. I was like, oh, that is possible. Like, I
Hmm.
thought it was just me, like you said, being 18 and just not knowing what the heck I was doing. Um, but I guess it could be part of the process. It's part of some
Yeah.
people's process. I'm not going to speak for everyone.
Yeah. No, and that's sort of like one of our messages is that every experience is so different, but that feeling of isolation is not unique to just you.
Mhm.
That seems to be a theme.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So you had your little guy, you went to university.
I did. I did. I went to university. I started off, with a bachelor's in psychology. And while I was there, I got pregnant again. Yeah, so my children are a year and 9 months apart.
Woo!
Yeah.
You had your hands full. I hate that saying you had your hands full, but you had your hands full.
Yeah. And well, my second son, Lee, my pregnancy was just weird. Like before I even started showing, I delivered him.
Really?
Yeah, like I was barely showing. Because with Dre, I didn't start showing until I was like 7 months pregnant. So
Mm.
people who saw me before 7 months and then saw me with a baby, they're like, no, he's not yours because I just saw you 2 months ago and you weren't pregnant. So yeah, so I guess I was going down that same path with Lee. And then he was born. He was 2.5 months premature
Hmm.
and weighed 2.5 pounds. There's a lot of 2.5s. And then he was in the hospital for 2.5 months.
Wow.
Took him home. And oh my gosh. Now, if I thought having Dre was scary, having Lee, who boy.
Oh man, yeah. What was that experience like?
Oh my gosh. So it was scary beyond words because not only hadn't I told like my mom and my grandmother that I was pregnant, so it's like, oh, you guys have another grandchild. And then, yeah, so here you are. I went to the hospital again unexpectedly, not expecting to deliver a child.
Yeah.
And He slipped out. He was actually breached. That's just to show how small he was.
Oh my
He slipped out.
gosh.
Yes. And all I saw was this little figure that they took out of me and ran. I just saw they're like, we have to get him into an incubator because his lungs are not developed. Blah, 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 blah. I mean, it sounded
Whoa.
like that to me. And they ran down, the doctor ran down the hallway, and they came back and said, okay, after what seemed like forever,
Mm-hmm.
back and said, we have him in an incubator. He's going to be, like when you see him again, he'll have wires and tubes and everything hooked up to him. And I couldn't imagine what that was like because I'd never seen a baby hooked up and all of that. So then, after they cleaned me up, they put me in a room, and wouldn't you know, they put me in. So this is Toronto,
Mm-hmm.
at a hospital. So unless you're in a private room or semi-private, you're in a ward.
Mm.
And so there were three other women who just had babies.
Full
Yes.
term, I'm sure. And
Oh, of
oh
course.
yeah.
So they wheeled me there, and then after a few hours, they brought him to me for me to see him. And I was like, wow, like I didn't know what to think, what to say. I just didn't. And I couldn't even touch him.
Mm.
I could just look at him in the incubator,
Yeah.
just, just hooked up with all these things. And he was just so tiny. And I couldn't even imagine holding him because I wouldn't even know how. I
Yeah.
honestly, you know, I knew I would have been afraid to hold him. So, yeah. So then they took him to Sick Kids Hospital. And I stayed in the hospital a few more days to people asking, how's your baby?
Mm. And he wasn't with you.
Oh, and I didn't
Mm.
know what was going to happen with him.
Yeah.
And every time they asked, it was, just waterworks.
Yeah.
And gosh, this is 36 years ago, and it's still, just thinking about it.
Don't make yourself uncomfortable at all, but it's something that stays with you, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. So then, of course, so my son, my fiance then, and I would go visit him in the hospital, and, with other children in, incubators all around.
Mm-hmm.
And just to see him, was like, first of all, when I saw him again, he didn't look like that same baby that I
Mm.
saw. Like, skin color was different. And, I was just like, you sure? And they had shaved that they were feeding him, you know? Yeah, I just wasn't sure. Like, I looked at him thinking, because I didn't get a chance to really look at him before, right?
Yeah.
And just seeing him, like, he was just hooked up to all these machines. So I didn't really get a chance to really look at him. And yeah, so when I saw him again, I was like, wow, okay, he looks different. But, I mean, I know he's mine, but I was just like, he just looks so different. Is it so possible to look that different within a few days?
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, so we'd visit him, and those were scary times because, machines beeping, and then to see that he's got one needle coming out of his head because they were feeding him. And then, his arms, like just needles everywhere and monitors everywhere. And of course, every time a monitor went off, I was like, they had to put me to sit down.
Mm.
I wasn't looking at my child. I was looking at the machines,
Mm-hmm.
and they're like, okay, just take a moment and realize the machines are like, they're going off because he is moving.
Mm.
And I thought, oh, okay. And the interesting thing was because not many of the other children in the incubators were moving.
Mm.
My baby was special.
Your baby wanted to groove.
Yes, he really did. So, but yeah, it was really scary. And, my older son, Dre, he'd come and, just stand and look at his brother and,
Mm.
wonder when's he coming home and what's going on with all these, things all on him. And yeah, so we did that for 2 months before they moved him to a hospital closer to us where, we could see him more often. Now, the crazy thing is, I mean, we could see more often. I can't tell you that I did. I'm not going to lie to you because I was afraid. I
Mm.
was afraid that if I spent too much time with him and he didn't make it,
Mm.
right, what would that feel like?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it should have been me focusing on my baby and I was focused on my feelings and what was I going to feel if he didn't, you know?
Yeah.
And then the other part of that was, well, then if he does, you need to spend as much time with him as possible,
Yeah.
you know? So, and then I had Dre at home, and at the time, I don't think no, we did have a vehicle, but it was like, going downtown, to visit. And I don't know if you know downtown Toronto, but
A
it's,
little bit. Yeah. Yeah.
and even back then, it was crazy. And we're like, so all the logistics kept us from visiting him as much as we should have. And for a long time, I was like, oh gosh, like, what did that do to my child? Like, and I just think of him just lying there and, just thinking of him being there alone was tough. It was really tough. My family life didn't permit me to be there all the time, so those thoughts in my head, of
Yeah.
fear. I always say if I could do it all over again, I'd do it so much differently.
It's so hard. That's so hard. I think a lot of us feel that way with a lot of things. And it's like, you can't go back and change the past, but like what you were thinking and what you were feeling are so valid. And there's that duality, right? Just like you were talking about, like, okay, well, if he doesn't make it, then I need to spend as much time with him as possible. But also, like, I need to protect my heart and I need to protect my soul. And I don't know how I'll handle that. And so, like, I think that it's so valid that both of those things were happening at the same time. At this point, were you and your partner living together or were you still living with family?
And we were living together.
Okay. So
Yeah.
so you didn't have mom and siblings there like all the time to sort of check on you, or were they still doing a pretty good job of supporting you?
They were. And actually, let me say this. We were living together with his parents.
Okay. Okay.
We still had that. We still had
Okay.
that.
Okay,
Yes.
good. Good.
Yes.
So okay, at least you had people there to sort of hold you and
Yes.
be there through that. And little brother, as much as a one and a half year old or almost 2 year old can comprehend, was also sort of trying to navigate that too. How did you kind of approach that with him? How did you explain the situation to him?
Well, I just, my Dre was ahead of his time.
Mm.
Always have been ahead of his time. So I just explained things to him like I would anybody else, and he understood.
Oh, that's
His
amazing.
brother's premature, and he's going to maybe need a little more help with things, and we just have to be there. And I mean, his heart went to his brother. I mean, forever. They grew up and they were roommates, and
Mm.
just that bond,
Mm-hmm.
just forever there. And yeah, so he understood really well.
That's amazing. How was your partner through this whole experience? Was he feeling some of the same things that you were feeling?
I don't know because he didn't talk about his feelings like that.
Okay.
I know because he has to be the man, and
Mm,
so I know he was scared,
yeah.
right? And we had a few conversations, but not a lot because I think neither one of us, we didn't want to say something that would, it's like, what if this and what if that? And then,
You didn't want to live in the what ifs.
no, no. And, and we don't know what reality was going to be, and just sitting there wondering and trying to figure out. So we didn't say anything.
Yeah. I mean, and that's a coping skill too. You guys were both protecting yourselves.
And we
Yeah,
were young.
you were.
I mean, he's a few years older than me, but we were still young.
That's every journey is different and everything's a construct. I mean, age is obviously you are your age, but it's just like you said that your oldest was ahead of his time. Like just because you guys were young doesn't mean that you weren't capable. And look at you, you did it. You survived it. So you mentioned a little bit about that guilt that you held. And we didn't even touch on like when you had your youngest, you weren't expecting to have him, right? Like you just went in and it was like, this is happening.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not at all expecting to have them. I just thought maybe they'll, tell me something, give me something, send me home.
Yeah.
And there's baby. And I'm like, we're not ready because, we were planning to move into our own place and do all of that. And yeah,
So
they
it
came.
kind of was thrust on you and you're just in it.
Yes.
At that time, what were some of your coping skills, or did you even know how to access your coping skills? Like, or did you just take it minute by minute, day by day?
First of all, I'd never heard the term coping skills, so I didn't even know that I had any.
Okay.
Right. So I just live life moment by moment, day by day.
Yeah.
One of my sayings ever since I read a Danielle Steele book when I was 14 years old, that I build my wings. I jump off the bridge and build my wings on the way down.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, so I lived a lot of my life that way,
Yeah.
you know,
And it and
wing
it worked out.
it. Yeah, the other one was on a wing and a prayer. That was my other saying. So yeah, I didn't plan a whole lot. I mean, I did plan on going to university,
Hmm.
and yeah, I planned that and
Yeah.
having my two kids before 25. Like I said, not sure when before 25, but now, you know,
The
uh,
universe said, here you go.
exactly. And I said thank you because honestly, I wouldn't have had it. I mean, I would have my babies all over again if I had a choice.
Hmm.
I would just know better now, like
Right.
know now what I didn't know then. Um, they tell me they had a great childhood because I'm like, I want to do over. And I have to tell you, my son, my artist son, um, there was an accident a few years ago, and his body is no longer with us.
Okay.
Yeah, so I still feel his spirit. I refuse to let him go,
Of
so that's
course.
what I did. So yeah.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But I do want to tell you that I never would have guessed that you are keeping his spirit alive. Um, I never would have known from the way that you're speaking about him. So I think that's so beautiful because I can feel his presence in you.
Yes, yeah, yeah. I refuse to speak about him in the past,
Mhm.
because I don't believe that he's gone anywhere.
Mhm.
know? And yeah, it was. You know what? It could have just been his time. I mean, when after the accident happened, so he had finished painting for the night, and he always painted way into the night, and then he'd go out on his skateboard, and he fell off his skateboard, and a car hit him. The thing is, Lord, I just pray that he wasn't hurt, like he didn't suffer.
Mhm.
I know he's not suffering now, but I
Mhm.
just pray that, there wasn't suffering. But later, so before I even found out, his artist friends were painting a mural. His, like, so many people, like every television station in Toronto, every radio station in Toronto, every a newspaper in Toronto covered his story.
Wow.
Yes. And yeah,
What an impact.
yes,
What an impact he made and is making in this world. Wow.
yes. And yeah, and I feel I mean, I have goosebumps right now just thinking about it because, and so not only did the artist paint a mural, I mean, a huge mural downtown Toronto, maybe
Yeah.
taking up 3 storefronts.
Wow.
And different artists had their own little, rendition of him and their thoughts. And then there was a hope wall, so where people can go in and write things. And then the skateboarding community had a vigil. And so all these different people, the artists had a vigil, the skateboarding people had a vigil. And it was so beautiful, the lives that he touched. And it was honestly an incredible moment. It was one of the saddest and darkest, but also one of the brightest.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? When I saw the lives that he impacted, I'm like, I haven't impacted this many lives, so maybe he completed his mission here.
Yeah.
And so that's how I choose to think about him. And
Yeah.
yeah, so he completed his mission. And there were other things because people would tell you, Dre's from another realm, and he just went back to where he came from.
It's like I did my work here is done. I got to go back. And I mean, I don't want to I want to be like sensitive with how I say this, but like you played a role in that. You brought him into this world. You gave this world an opportunity to experience him. And like I said, I love how you are keeping him here because I never would have known. His presence is clearly there with you.
Yes, always, always, and always. Sometimes I feel like he's laughing at me, and I have to tell him don't laugh at his mother. People think okay. I still talk to him, and I just feel him. I really do. And through all the stories that people told me about him, the people who he helped, the things that he did for his friends that he never told me, because that's just Dre, right? Dre would not, he like, doing something meant that he did it for that person, and it's not to tell the whole world, oh, I did this for this person,
Yeah.
not about that at all. And, just a beautiful, beautiful soul who, like you said, I am so honored that God used me
Mm,
in his creation, like to carry him and to nurture him through life.
yeah.
Um, because it was great. I mean, we had fun in childhood because actually, when they were, so Lee was maybe 2 and Dre was 3. And so after we got married, then we got divorced. So we were
As happens.
yeah, separated and, for a long time. But I mean, we had fun. We would go
Yeah.
places and just do things. And, people would think that I was their sister because, we're playing tag or having water fights, or, there were the days that they didn't have to call me mom because anybody thinking that a mom would allow her child to just be so crazy and, running around in an airport playing tag, you
So
know.
that sounds amazing.
Yeah, it was great. We had fun. We had a whole lot. And that was my goal. Because, like, even today when I work with families, I tell them, like, please have fun because
Yeah.
these moments, they don't last. I want to, honestly, I'd be okay going back to when they were, to back when Lee was born. Because I think
Mm.
I did everything pretty good until then.
Hmm.
Because I didn't know how to mother a premature child, even though it's the same. And I mean, he slept a lot.
Yeah.
And they warned me of that. They said you might have to wake him up to feed him. And that's what I had to do. Wake him up, feed him, change him, and put him right back down. And yeah, it was, and then there were the concerns. Would he develop as Dre did?
Hmm.
Would there be concerns with his development? And that lingered for a while,
Yeah.
but I went to, they do these checks, right? So it's like, bring him back in 3 months. And I brought him back in 3 months. And they're like, oh, okay, fine. Now, Chelsea, what they didn't tell me was that they were looking for, to see if he had met developmental milestones. Now, that also was a term that I had not heard back
Yeah.
then.
Yeah.
So they're just like, just bring him back. And I brought
That's
him
so
back.
that's so frustrating that they weren't communicating with you.
So, well, and then again, that was 36 years ago,
But
right?
yes, yes.
So things are not, they weren't as they are now. And so, yeah, so I brought him back at 3 months, brought him back at 6 months, brought him back at 9 months. And every time they're like, okay, he's fine. So when I brought him back at 9 months, they're like, well, he doesn't have to come back. And I'm like, okay. Now, being so young and not knowing what questions to ask, I didn't ask any questions. And I just said, okay. You
Yeah.
know, one thing I remember them doing was having him put shapes in a shape sorter. Now, the interesting thing is we didn't have shape sorters at our house,
Hmm.
right? Our children they didn't grow up with toys. They grew up with a lot of social interaction with family. One uncle would take one and the other uncle would take the other, and they would just take them out and go places. And, there was just a lot of interaction, which I found out later was actually the best thing for them.
Hmm.
Dr. Ravi Rajaratnam, who wrote a book, Hardwiring versus Rewiring, talks about the fact that we are our child's best toy. And I was like, okay, so we did something. And again, I didn't know what I was doing. I was
Yeah,
just
you
going
just
through
did
the
it.
motions. By the grace of God, it was all the right things,
Hmm.
because I'm not going to say my children are perfect, but then who is, right? We
What
all have
is
our struggles.
perfect?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's such a misnomer. And however, when we talk about childhood, and I'm glad that Dre and I had that conversation before he decided, Earth was not his dwelling place anymore.
Yes.
I'm glad we had those conversations and I was able to ask for forgiveness for some things that I felt that I didn't get quite right. And he'd be like, Mom, what are you talking about? You're the best. I'm like, I mean, honestly, when he said those things, I'm like, okay, I could die now
Right.
because that's what mattered to me, what my children's perception of their upbringing, you know? And just recently I asked Leah, I was just like, if I had a do over, he goes, Mom, I don't know why I want to do it over because it was great.
Oh,
I was like, oh, but I didn't know all these things that I know now. He goes, yeah, but we had fun.
yeah.
And,
I
so
think our kids have such a different view of their, I mean, my kids are still very young. I have an 8-year-old and a 1-year-old, but their view of their childhood and our view of their childhood are completely different. Like I heard you talk earlier about that guilt that you felt when you were going through the whole NICU experience, and I'm not sure how long that lingered with you or if it still lingers with you, but like you said, like he doesn't have that. He's like, Mom, you were there for me.
well, it lingered until maybe last year.
Really?
It did.
What
And
changed it?
I'll tell you what happened. So yeah, it just, and that's actually one of the reasons I got into the field that I got into, because I don't want parents to be asking themselves what they could have and should have done better or differently.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Um, so it was, last year was crazy. And I say crazy, well, last year was a different year. So on December 9th, I received a phone call that Lee is in the hospital.
Mm.
He is being sedated and he's being paralyzed
Oh my gosh.
in ICU.
Oh my gosh.
So, and I thought, okay. Now, the reason I didn't panic was because when I heard the story of how he got to the hospital, I was like, okay, thank you, Lord. I just felt the blessing that it was
Mm-hmm.
because he was in the subway. He fell in the subway.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. A security guard saw him fall and called 911.
Okay.
Yeah. So now before that, up until 2 weeks before that, they hadn't had security guards in the subways in Toronto.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So they called 911. As soon as the paramedics got there, he said he couldn't breathe.
Mm.
Right. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking, thank you, Lord. Right. So they took him to the best hospital in the country,
Mm-hmm.
Toronto General. And so, like I said, they sedated him, they paralyzed him, and they were trying to figure out. So they diagnosed him with pneumonia.
Mm.
They couldn't tell what type of pneumonia, what strain.
Mm-hmm.
So they had him on every antibiotic that they could think of while they were culturing and testing to see what was happening. He ended up in that hospital. He was in ICU for a month,
Wow.
sedated and paralyzed
Wow.
for a month. Now, when I walked into that room, I was like, oh my goodness, this is a do-over. You
Mm.
have to be careful
Oh,
what you for.
right. Like he's an like he's your NICU baby again.
Yes. So I was like, we really have to be careful what we ask for because here he is in the hospital. And from his room, what could I see across the street?
Uh,
Sick Kids Hospital. The sign
oh.
was directly across the street. So every time I looked across, I saw Sick Kids. So I'm like, okay, Lord, this is a rebirth.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm here and I talk to him every day. I'm like, listen, baby, I am not, I said, we are leaving this hospital together.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're walking out. I said, we may even run, but we're doing this together. And I just kept seeing him. I just kept seeing myself walking beside him, holding his hand if I have to, walking out of that hospital with him. I didn't see anything else. I refused to see anything else.
Yeah.
And anybody who visited him with that, oh, I'm so sorry, I did not invite them back
Mm.
because I only wanted people who could see what I saw, who could see him healed, who could see him walking out of that hospital.
Yeah, of course.
And if they didn't, I mean, family members and, people close, 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 really close to me, the ones who felt that way, I was just like, no, because it was hard for them,
Yeah.
you know? And I had to make it okay for me because I had to be there for my son.
Mm-hmm.
So, and because I got this do-over, I think there were 2 days out of the whole time he was in the hospital that I didn't go. One, the weather was super nasty. Um, and then I was just, and then it's funny because there was another day that was super nasty and I made it. I'm like, you could have gone the other day, you know?
There was probably a reason. There was probably a reason. You were keeping yourself safe.
Right. So yeah, so I made it a point to be there every day to talk to him, to massage his feet and hands, whatever I could do. And I put on healing tones. I just did all the things and I just kept talking to him, you know, about us leaving. And, they're like, well, we don't know if he could hear you. And I said, I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm just going to do it. And there were some people, and some of the nurses, they'd play music for him.
Mm.
And I mean, it was just beautiful. And, and there were some moments while he was in there, like there was one time that he had internal bleeding, like there was a puncture to his stomach. And again, I refused to believe that, it was because I was like, you know what? Both of them are not going to leave me.
Yeah.
Both of, you know what I mean? I still feel Dre, but I just don't feel that it was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, Lord, I manage with Dre and I'm good. I'm just not ready for, I'm not,
No.
you know. And so he got out of ICU after a month. And it was funny because they were like, well, he's been intubated for so long and this may happen and that may happen. And I just was just like, I'm not believing that. I'm not receiving it. It's just bouncing off me. It's not even, I'm not letting that in my ear. Almost like I want to say, la, 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 la. The doctor hearing, cover my ears. I don't want to hear it.
Yes.
And yeah. And then another time the doctor was like, oh, it was his last day on the floor. I was like, thank you. Because they rotate them.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, well, I'm a little concerned about him. He didn't seem as alert today. And I was just like, no, I'm not even receiving that. Not at all. Because when I walked into the room to see him, his eyes were open and he would, nod his head and to respond because of course he was intubated. So he could, and they were like, well, we may have to think, explore putting a trach in because we don't want to keep him intubated because of the side of, all the effects
Mm-hmm.
of all of that. And I was just like, the whole time I prayed and I had a cousin who was just like, listen, one of my cousins, she told me, she said, listen, when you walk into that hospital, doesn't matter. Don't listen to the machines and don't listen to the doctor. Just know that the Lord's got them. They could say whatever. I mean, I know people, like I have a friend, a really good friend of mine who was told 13 years before I met her that she only had months.
Mm.
And we've known each other for about 20 years now.
That's a lot of months.
Yes, exactly. So I choose not to believe because I believe I believe in my higher power, my source. And I know that, the doctors don't know everything and they don't have all the answers, And I mean, my baby was on, I think maybe 12 different IVs,
Mm. Yeah.
and yeah, then at one point they had him on dialysis, they had him on insulin, they had him on, I mean, just everything because they were like, well, his kidneys aren't working and this and that. And I was just like, Don't even. I'm believing that they are. And sometimes during dialysis, things would happen and they had to stop it. And they're like, well, this and that. And I was just like, well, that's okay. It will all be well. And today, I mean, all the concerns that they had, his memory is amazing because he's remembering things that I haven't even, like he'll
Oh,
have to say, "Oh, you
wow.
remember?" I'm like, no. And it was so crazy because, so some of what they said apparently stuck with me because one day when he was moved to a regular room, he said something and I'm like, I don't think so. He goes, yeah, but mom, yeah. And I'm like, are you sure? And then it turned out he was right. And I was like, okay, so he's not hallucinating.
Yeah.
He's not, because he asked me one day, he's like, oh, is Dre coming? And I was like, oh, Lord, he doesn't remember.
Oh,
But then he did, you know,
okay.
that's so I called his dad and I'm like, if he talks about Dre, just go on, just go with whatever he says.
Yeah.
Because I'm not ready for it. He has to focus on his healing and I don't want him, and he goes, oh no, he said something. And then another day I said something to him. He said something about Dre. He goes, oh, I felt like he just walked by me. I go, did you punch him in his face for not talking to you? He goes, my dead brother, mom. I was like,
Oh. What
I
a
was like,
way to be like, yeah, mom, I know what's going on.
right. So I was like, okay. So I panicked for nothing. Yeah. So then, yeah, he did great. So he was in a regular room for 2 weeks and then a rehab for 2 weeks and walked out of the hospital.
Walked with you, walked the two of you.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
That speaks to just like a mother's intuition. And again, like I completely and 100% respect your faith. It's not something that I subscribe to, but like all I can feel is like a mama's manifestation. Like you were manifesting and you were not going to let anyone tell you otherwise. And that is so powerful. I'm so glad that he was able to come through the other side and that you didn't have to be like, I don't want to give my other son back to wherever he came from.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, not ready. So, yeah, and I mean, he's amazing. He's such a comedian. So he's got me laughing every day.
So that was healing for you in terms of the guilt that you were holding on to for all of those years because it was your do-over. It was an unfortunate do-over,
Yes, it was.
but you did it and you were there for him and you manifested that healing for him, and that's beautiful. That's so beautiful.
Yes.
I was curious too to sort of go back a little bit because you said that he and his brother were so close. How did he handle that
Mhm.
when that whole thing unfolded?
That was tough.
Yeah. Well, I mean, how did he handle that, and then how did you handle that as his mom?
So, thing is, I was here in Florida
Mhm.
and in Toronto, and both my sons lived in Toronto. Well, my younger
Mm.
son still does. And I didn't want him because it was all over social media. And thankfully he wasn't big on he wasn't always on social media because all of Dre's friends were posting and he hadn't known. He hadn't heard
Mhm.
anything yet. So I had my best friend send her husband to get him and then have her daughter tell him because
Mm.
she couldn't tell him.
Yeah.
She could not tell him. So because when he was picked up, he's like, Uncle, like, what's going on? He's like, well, when we get home, I'll tell you. And he's like, so he knew it was either me or Dre, like something was
Mm.
up. He knew there was something up. Yeah, it was, oh my gosh, it was like the hardest thing. Just me thinking about my baby being there alone going through this. And, yes, I went up there 2 days later, but it was 2 days later,
Yeah,
you know,
that can seem like forever.
it did.
Yeah.
It felt like forever. Yeah, it was tough. It was one of the toughest things because he was also going through some personal things at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And and I mean, he's given me permission to talk about it. He was in a treatment program because he was struggling with alcohol addiction.
Okay.
And so he was in a treatment program, actually in a pre-treatment program. And so that's where my friend went to get him. And yeah, so I was thinking, oh goodness, like he's just,
Yeah.
and then, uh, so that was really tough. So I made it up there. And again, we spent all the time we could together. And, my grandchild, because my baby left a 5-year-old, she was 5 at the time.
Mm.
And so that was tough. And I think that was harder for me because I was like, my grandchild needs a father who loved and doted and just was like, amazing,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, he had a great example set for him of what a parent looks like, because like you said, you gave them, I don't know how I want to word it. Like, the three of you created this beautiful life and this beautiful connection. And like,
We
I
did.
don't know anything about, I know nothing about your family other than what I am experiencing through this conversation. But I can imagine that she feels that, and that
Yeah.
she feels the love of her father through the connection of the family that you created.
Yeah, I pray so. I pray so. Because, being 5, that's just so young. And then now,
Yes.
so, but, we did all we could, and
Hmm.
continue to do all we can to make sure that, the love is felt and the
Yeah.
support in every way that we can. So, because my family's pretty amazing and pretty supportive and,
Yeah,
and I'm
which is so great.
for that, we're very close and it's a blessing.
I just, the themes that I'm getting, I always pull themes from all of my sessions, but like the themes that I'm getting are where your journey started. Like, you had a clear idea of what you wanted. It definitely did not go exactly according to plan, but like you said, a wing and a prayer, and you'll build your wings as you go. Like, what a beautiful thing you created along with your family and your boys and your partner. It sounds like even though you didn't stay together, you still were able to create a good family experience for your boys.
Yeah, and we're still
Yeah.
friends to this day. We are still friends.
That's so
And
great. That's
yeah.
so rare.
Yeah. They would spend summers with him, and holidays and that they would spend with him. Because he actually moved to a different province. And it was so sweet because the night before he moved, he came and he spent the night with us so he could, be there with them and explain to them that, he was still going to be around. It was the hardest day for my Lee, though.
Mm.
I'd never seen him cry so much.
Mm.
And actually Dre too, they both cried, but Lee always kept his feelings inside because
Hmm.
somebody told him, and if I could find that person, I would punch them in their face. No, seriously, somebody told him that men don't cry. And I think
Ugh.
that had something to do with the fact that he turned to drinking because men don't cry,
Mm.
you know? Yeah. And so that day, and I mean, he's 6, right?
Hmm.
Riding around, tears stream. I'd never seen so many tears stream down anybody's face. And I said, baby, it's okay to cry. He goes, I'm not crying. There's something in my eye. I'm like, you're 6.
Oh my
It's okay.
gosh. Yeah.
You know? And Dre would just cry. Like, Dre didn't care. Dre just cried.
Dre let it all out.
Yes, he certainly did.
Yeah.
And yeah. So that's why when I work with parents, I said, listen, let your child experience their feelings
Hmm.
because you don't want them to bottle it up and then literally bottle it up later.
Yeah.
Because yeah.
You've mentioned a little bit, like, if you could go back and knowing what you know now, and that's all. It's almost hard for me to hear, because hearing your story, it's like, girl, you did phenomenal, and you were up against so much, and you did. I'm a broken record, but you created this beautiful life for you and your family. But like, other things you said, like you'd never seen a premature baby and you'd never heard of postpartum depression and things like that. What are some of the things that you wish someone would have told you about becoming a parent before you were sort of thrust into it?
Before I thrust myself into
Well,
it.
sure, we'll go with that.
That, you know what? You don't have to be perfect. It's not a perfect science. It's not a perfect anything. Love, oh my gosh, just as long as you love, as long as there is love, it can transcend pretty much anything.
Yeah.
And I think maybe, you know what? I'd say everything. Love can transcend all. Because without love, I don't think there's anything. And just, I always ask my babies, does your mother love you?
Mm.
And they'd all say, yes. I'm like, how do you know? And they would tell me, it's like, okay, it's not what I did. It's not because I gave them things. It's because of the things, the experiences we had together. And honestly, it would just be like every evening after school, and when they got ready for bed, we would lay in bed together, the three of us, me in the middle, one on either side, and we would just be for half an hour before they went to bed.
That sounds so wonderful. If I knew my kids wouldn't literally climb all over me for the whole 30 minutes. It sounds so beautiful and wonderful though. But
yeah, this is kind of corny because we had a name for it too. So it was funny. There was this rapper called Chill Rob G, and we called it Chill Rob G time.
I love that.
I don't know how we came up with it, but that was our Chill Rob G time.
Hey, I love it. It works. I have all these beautiful images. This is great. So I know I told you at the beginning of this that I don't interject a lot. I feel like I've been interjecting a lot. But one of the things that I've learned through doing these is that I meet certain people at certain times and I hear things that I need to hear in those moments. And this conversation in particular and this experience is really instilling this sense of like peace within me. And no, for real, like, because I am still sort of in that deep, like I've got a 1-year-old who's very, very busy and I'm still in recovery from my own postpartum mental health disorders. And so I have a constant like guilt and anxiety and fear that I'm not doing enough. And just hearing your story is really instilling this sense of peace, this sense of calm, and that message of love, like love above all. Like you can feel sad, you can feel confused, you can feel scared, and you can feel love. I hope that's what you're trying to convey, because that's what's sitting with me right now. It's so beautiful. Beautiful is my word today. Everything, like one day I think one of my things was like strength, and one day one of my things was like self-advocacy. Beauty is what I'm getting from this connection, and it's definitely resonating with me. So you said love above all, and that's something that you wish that someone would have told you. If you could go back in time to yourself before you had your kids, before any of these experiences, you can't tell yourself what you're going to experience, but you can instill something within yourself to carry you through. And I tell everyone it can be a word, it can be a phrase, it can be a prayer, it can be a feeling, but something that you know will carry you through. What would you instill within yourself?
Perseverance. Yes. Because there's so many times in life I had just different things happen and I just gave up. I mean, not where it concerned parenting, but just things that would have made our lives, maybe, I don't want to use that term, but it would have enhanced our lives in certain ways because, it was me and them. And, there was a time when I was on government assistance and, so things could have been different. And, I chose not to persevere. I was just like, oh no, because of this, that, or the other thing. And yeah, so that's why, like, that's something that I try to instill in my boys, to just keep going. It's you going to fall, keep getting up and keep moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to fall. And when they fell, I let them. And I
Yeah.
let them get up on their own because, when we prevent children from falling, we're doing them a disservice.
We're not preparing them.
Exactly. And I allowed both my boys to problem solve. I didn't get involved
Mm-hmm.
because I wanted them to really get to know each other because I saw instances where children didn't get to problem solve. And yeah, sometimes that problem solving was a slap or a punch, and I let them figure it out,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and they became best friends.
Mm-hmm. The next question and the final question that I will ask, I talked about what I gained and what I felt from this connection, but what do you hope my listeners who just got to experience your story, what do you hope they take away from it?
Love above all,
Mm-hmm.
and then not to judge themselves because they are doing the best they can. I'm going to speak to them. You are doing the best you can with what you have and what you know. And don't allow anybody else to judge you because they don't know your situation,
Mm-mm.
right? There's a song that I love, and it's it's a Christian worship song, but it's about this person, they're acting this way, but you don't know what just happened to them. You don't know if they just lost a loved one. You don't know like what they're going through. So
Mm-hmm.
let's not judge. Right. So I'm saying to you, parents, don't allow anybody to judge you because they don't know your situation. If they were in your shoes, they may not handle it with the grace that you're handling it with. So, just give yourself some grace and
And,
love.
and love above all.
Yes.
I think that a lot of my listeners need to hear that. So I appreciate that. I want to thank you personally for when we started this, I know I was like, I'm not really a morning person and yada, yada, yada. I feel like I can breathe right now. I feel such a calm. I also want to thank you for sharing your story. I want to thank you for allowing me to experience your boys and continuing that presence of Dre and I want to look up his work and I want to look up Lee's work and I am excited about this.
Okay. So for Dre's work,
Yes.
if you Google Andre Alexander Toronto, you'll
Okay.
see. You will get to know my Dre.
Okay, I'm going to do it. I want my listeners to do it because we are going to help keep him and his spirit alive and well, even though you're doing an amazing job of that.
Yeah.
Um,
I just want to say this, sorry to interrupt you. For Lee, it's Lee Guy Photos.
Lee Guy
Um, yeah,
Photos, and remind me,
Alexander.
Andre
Yeah,
Alexander, got it. And
yeah,
we will be looking that up for sure. But
yeah. Lee has his photos mostly on Facebook.
okay.
Dre has things everywhere.
Well, thank you so much, and yeah, I'm gonna be following your journey for sure. Teresa, your story has had an incredibly powerful impact on me, filling me with an immense sense of gratitude and peace. Thank you for sharing your story with me and my audience, and for the valuable work you do to support families. I'm really looking forward to exploring your son's artwork, and I would encourage my listeners to do the same. If you want to follow along with us on Quiet Connection, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads at Quiet Connection or at Quiet Connection Podcast. You can support our community by writing a review on your favorite podcast platform and by sharing our episodes on social media. You could also consider becoming a Patreon member and gain access to things like bonus content, ad-free listening, and goodies in the mail once a month. If you'd like to share your personal journey, you can reach us through our website, quietconnectionpodcast.com, or by email at quietconnectionppmh@gmail.com. Join us next time when another story is told and you realize you are not alone, I see you.